Hi, can you see the PowerPoint now, Patricia?
We can see the PowerPoint.
Great. I just thought I'd start with that song just for the atmosphere, and I suppose because this is about reflection, I suppose, and it's reflection on some of the work I've done and on other people's work as well, in the area of religious education in a changing world. So today I'm going to talk about just to mention some of the research studies, provide some context, and look at the diversity within religions so that we're avoiding making assumptions about people or stereotyping people. Have a little look at some student voice, RE teacher voice, and non-co-religionist teacher voice, and then maybe at some strategies. And I'm looking forward to the discussion at the end more than anything, really. And please stop me at any point during the presentation, because I'm very happy to answer questions. So I suppose just to put myself in context and why I'm reflecting on this, I suppose I've talked to minority faith students about their experiences of attending schools with the Catholic ethos. I've spoken to religion teachers, and I've also spoken to non-co-religious teachers about their experiences and their practices. And I suppose I'm coming from a constructivist viewpoint where my reflection is based on trying to understand my experiences of the world. So just looking at some societal and constitutional reform, so we can see in 1973, the special position of the Catholic Church and the recognition of other named denominations was removed from the Constitution. So up until 73, there was that special link between the Catholic Church and the state in the Constitution. And then we had more liberalising events like in 1995, the divorce referendum. And then in 2015, we had the marriage equality. And in 2018, we had provided for the regulation of termination of pregnancy. And then we had the removal of the word blasphemous from the Constitution. And again, we had a liberalising in 2019 of divorce law, and also the recognition of foreign divorces. So they're just constitutional changes, and I suppose it's that decoupling of religion and the state, and a liberalising of values. But still, we identify as a very Catholic country. In the 2016 census, 78% of the population identified as Catholic. But it's a little bit different when we look at young Irish people's religious affiliation. So a study in 2018 found that 54% of 16 to 19-year-olds identified as Catholic. So that's just over half. And 39% were identified as not religious. And then we had minority religions as well, bringing in at 7%. And in 2017, 80% of 18 to 34-year-olds surveyed said they could be happy without a religious belief. So this is just providing some context and background. However, enrolment in post-primary schools by school ethos, I think what we need to pick out from this is that 75% of post-primary schools either have solely a religious patron, or they have a religious patron in combination with the state. So that's the interdenominational schools, or maybe they have two different denominations working together where there's been an amalgamation, usually. So just looking at rights and responsibilities, I suppose, and this is just background at this stage, that religious education in a Catholic school, that there's an educational dimension, but also a faith formation dimension, and provide that schools with a Catholic ethos should provide opportunities for faith formation, and that they are entitled to teach the syllabus through the lens of their own religious tradition. And also the Employment Equality Act outlines the right of patrons to maintain a particular ethos in a school and to allow favourable treatment on religious grounds to an employee or prospective employee. And however, the new junior cycle RE syllabus accommodates all worldviews and does not include faith formation. So we can see a fracture here. And also, I suppose, I think it's important to point out that in 2018, schools are no longer allowed to give preferential admission to co-religionist students. So in that sense, all schools must accept students of all faiths and none. And just looking at the diversity within beliefs, Catholicism, English describes 4 types of Catholics: Orthodox, both believe and belong; cultural, neither strongly believe in the church nor feel that they belong to it, yet maintain some beliefs and participate in Catholic rites of passage. Creative, and I think this is important, that people have a mix of Catholic beliefs and practices and maybe spiritual sources as well. Or people who identify as Catholic but are opposed to the church, or the institutional church maybe would be more accurate. And then there's lots of names here that I think people might be familiar with: cultural Catholicism, and I'll just performative religion, because I think that's an important one, because that's where people identify as Catholic because they believe there's social and even work benefits to identifying as Catholic, and I think that's relevant in education. And again, just more of the diversity within Catholicism: a reduction in mass attendance, and again, how many people said that religion was important to them in 2017, just 56% of Irish Christians. And a 2012 survey commissioned by the Association of Catholic Priests found that most Catholics do not agree with church teaching on some matters. For example, 75% report official Catholic Church teachings on sexuality have no relevance, and 87% believe priests should be allowed to marry, and 77% believe there should be women priests, and 72% believe older married men should be allowed to be priests. And then I'm just going to move on and look at the diversity again within beliefs, or within what are now called the nones. And I think it's a very unfortunate term. I think to call someone a non is not very kind or representative even. So these are individuals who may identify as atheists, agnostics, or describe their religion as nothing in particular, but that doesn't mean they haven't got very defined beliefs, or beliefs that are important to them. And it can be expressed in many different ways. And in the University of Edinburgh, a list of 33 possible religious and non-religious labels were used by students when a study was carried out there. And again, that many were happy to select multiple labels, and that idea of people holding multiple religious beliefs is growing in popularity, I suppose. And Morris his research identified that children are doing it as well. Primary school children, as one of them described himself as a Catholic Buddhist. And then diversity within the nuns, again, this idea of a civil religion. Because what people miss a lot about religion is the sense of community, or that energy that it brings to people. And people are finding that community and energy in things like the Black Lives Matter campaign, or civic earth religion, so environmental concerns, and young people coming together, and people of all religions and none joining together with energy for things that matter to them. And I just thought this was interesting about female atheists, that the atheist woman's ways of being in the world is infused with empathy, relationality, and aversion to imposing their worldview on others. And this is an alternative to that stereotype of the angry theist, or the angry atheist. And that a lot of the time atheists, female atheists remain quiet about their beliefs because they don't want to offend anyone else, or they don't want to impose their worldview on anybody. And just young British religious nuns, this is a very large scale study, 10,000 13 to 17-year-olds. And this was the breakdown. Only about half who identify as non-religious don't believe in God. Others are unsure, and some believe in a higher power. Some believe in God some of the time, but not always. And some have doubts. And I know God really exists. So some do believe in God, although they consider themselves non-religious. So a lot of variety there. And this is research, Patricia's research, and I think it's great to have it, because it's looking at 300 postgraduate initial teacher education students in the Republic of Ireland, and it's very new. And what Patricia found and Aveen was that 33% did not identify with an institutional religious belief, and 27% described themselves as atheist, free-thinking, or lapsed. And 19% said that they don't really know what to believe. And at first that may seem worrying, but I suppose I believe that it's good to be flexible with our beliefs in a way, and that we can, as we grow, they change, and that we can accept that, and as we learn, that our beliefs and knowledge change. So I suppose there we have that kaleidoscope of different beliefs, both within those who identify as Catholics and those who identify as nuns, and they're the two biggest groups in the census. I'm going to have a look now at just some information around what's happening, current practices in the schools. And student voice is very important, and students actually have a right, children have a right to express their opinions. So going back, the Youth Forum Take Charge of Change in 2012, initiated by President Higgins and representing 775 young people, they call for a secular education system, while research by FOSS in community schools reports children felt Catholic schools were privileged in RE, but they didn't want to be separated for RE. And the Forum on Patronage and Pluralism, which interviewed 81 young people from 19 different schools about their experience of religion, they articulate a clear desire that schools should be a place where all students feel included, irrespective of their beliefs. And they expressed some negativity as well. But again, there was a feeling that they didn't want to be segregated. And just from some of my own research with post-primary students, because I often think that post-primary haven't been acknowledged in this debate as much as primary school children. And it was evident from the students that sometimes their freedom of thought, conscience, and religion was not realised. So they had to attend religious services, and they had to attend Catholic prayers. And opting out of RE and faith formation was problematic for them. And it was, even those who were allowed to opt out, there was problems there because they felt excluded, or they felt other. And they felt that their beliefs were unfairly and negatively stereotyped. And all of them, without exception, believed that we shared a common humanity, and they want to be educated together. So they didn't want to be segregated along religious lines. And religion teacher interviews, they described several challenges that they experienced, including a lack of societal and school support for RE, cultural Catholicism, and negativity due to repeated scandals in the church. And they again had concerns around students opting out of religion class. And also, I think it's very important that teachers are trying to navigate this space, and they showed a lot of autonomy and agency in what they taught during RE. And I think, in fairness to teachers, it is a response to increasing diversity of beliefs in schools, and trying to marry it maybe with their school's ethos. And in 2019, only 42% sat RE at a junior cycle, although up until junior cycles, all students are supposed to have 2 hours of religious education, and at senior cycle, only 2.4% sat leaving certificate religion. And again, they would have all participated in religious education. Teachers varied in how they understood their role. Some felt it was important to support the school's religious ethos and to develop the morals and values of the students. Others felt developing students' ability to question and think critically was a key role. And some saw the importance of RE in developing religious literacy and tolerance. And some chose an eclectic mix. Some also, one teacher said, particularly at Leaving Cert, that it was difficult to teach RE, teach the syllabus, because other RE teachers weren't, and it was difficult if in the room next door students were being allowed to watch a video or do their homework. So there were the internal issues there as well. And they're just more about that, I suppose, the difference in how RE teachers saw their role in teaching religion. And teacher preparedness to teach students of minority faith or non-religious worldview. Minority faith, 37% felt they were very prepared, while 45% felt they were very prepared to teach non-religious students. And then we have a big middle ground as well. And I think it's important, I suppose, teachers at the coalface to ask them how they would address the increasing plurality. And many talked about curricular change, that they should be more about multiple faith, respect and tolerance, that we should value tradition, and that RE has an important place for social cohesion. Some felt that we need to diversify our schools, improvements in teacher training, more resources, policy, inspection, and some are happy with the status quo. So again, a broad spectrum of views there. And then just looking at non-religious teachers' voice, because I think that's important as well in a predominantly denominational educational context. So both in the north and south of Ireland, schools are exempt from equality legislation in relation to religion. And how that impacted on teachers who were non-co-religionists was that they felt that they were playing a role, playing a game, staying quiet about their beliefs. Even though it's not always overt, that that, you know, you don't say that around here. You don't say that you're an atheist. And then looking at, I suppose, the broader aspect and the European Convention of Human Rights, it would say that freedom to manifest one's religion or beliefs should be subject only to limitations. And basically, I think that what I've highlighted there is the most important thing: for the protection and the rights and freedoms of others. Leader guiding principles places a lot of importance on teaching theoretical religious education, and that religious literacy can foster respect, religious freedom, and promote understanding of societal diversity. And conversely, that if people are religiously illiterate, that it drives intolerance and discrimination and negative stereotypes. And the United Nations Human Rights Committee General Comment number 1, that the state should maintain a neutral and impartial position, and mutual respect is a relevant touchstone, and where tensions arise due to pluralism, that the state has a responsibility not to remove the causes of tension, but to ensure that groups tolerate each other. And it was just yesterday I attended a seminar, Teo Adenusi, and he was just saying that really we need to move forward from this idea of respect and tolerance, that narrative needs to push forward, where we talk about our shared humanity, and we don't create this sense of us and other, I suppose. And Vatican II documents the right to religious freedom has its foundation in the very dignity of the human person. No one is to be forced to act in a manner contrary to his own beliefs. And I think this is a lovely idea. It's an African philosophy, and what Ubuntu means is, I'll just describe a story. An anthropologist put a basket of fruits or sweets at the base of a tree, and he said to some young children, he said, right, lads, you know, the first one, I want you to race to the basket, and the first one there gets the sweets. And the children held hands, and they all walked together towards the tree. So they all shared the sweets, and he said to them, you know, why did you do that? And one of them said, how could I be happy without when others are not happy? So I suppose that's that idea again, that with rights come responsibilities to others, that the narrative needs to move from, I suppose, us all claiming our rights or our space to that idea of our shared humanity. And Ubuntu actually was a guiding philosophy in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. And then John Hume, I think, you know, if we're trying to move this process forward, I think his speech when accepting the Nobel Peace Prize is very relevant, and I'll just stop and let you take in what he said. And then I looked, and as part of my thesis, I did some research on how different communities deal with pluralism and diversity, and social services and the health services in particular have done quite a lot of work on this, and student nurses, there's theories of cultural competence and cultural humility, and I kind of using those, this is very much based on cultural competence and cultural humility models. I talk about identity humility, and it's an endeavour to respect individual identity. And the essential elements, or the core elements of identity humility theory, are about being reflexive, acknowledging power relations, looking at human rights, but everyone's human rights, looking at the fluidity, understanding the fluidity and the need for communication. So, as you know, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion, and the Vatican II is very clear on this. Any discrimination against men or harassment of them because of their race, colour, condition of life or religion, and that we should maintain good fellowship among each other. And part of identity humility is this idea of the individual identity. I think in Ireland sometimes our identity has been linked to being Catholic and Irish rather than Protestant and British. And that every human being has their own identity, and that we need to avoid stereotyping, and beliefs are not monolithic or knowable. And that the belief fluidity among young people suggests more blended, porous, tentative approach to belief and identity. And that's that idea that, you know, this process is fluid, that there will be no end to it as such. And communication, that we need to engage with each other, and that personal humility and dialogue replace any attempt at competence. So originally these models were based on competence. So you knew about Islam, you knew about the nuns, you knew about people, and then you addressed the situation. But you know, beliefs are too varied, and there's too many different beliefs to be able to become competent with, and therefore that attempt at competence is just not possible. That our best way forward is to communicate and to deal with people as we meet them, and to listen to individuals' needs. And the need for internal reflexivity, that we constantly challenge how we view and relate to others, and also that we address institutional practices, and we address institutional norms and hegemonies that may no longer be as acceptable as they were. And again, this idea that we look at power relations, and this may be intergenerational, and I think that could be a really tough issue in post-primary schools, where we're supposed to look at student voice and also incorporate parent voice, and that there might be a clash there, but it is a power relationship that may impact on schools. And to avoid hegemony and to avoid privilege, or to understand how they both relate to practice. And final slide, I'm going to leave it to David Hume, and that's that our humanity transcends our identity. I'm going to stop sharing, because you know I think there's so many people here with a lot of knowledge and understanding in this area, and it's about our